Hey guys, welcome back. Week 8's in the books, and gotta say there was some pretty fun stuff that happened. Some sick catches throughout this week. We had the Keon Coleman one-handed catch in the end zone. That was beautiful. I was like, nice catch. And then the Joku Moss and the Ravens defender too. That was a pretty good one. And then Lad McConkey when he caught the one and shoved off the guy, broke away from the defender, the Saints defender, and then went cross like the whole screen basically, and basically for that 60-yard touchdown. And then Detroit dropped 50 points on Tennessee. And then the best one of the night, which is I'm sure everyone's favorite play, was the Hail Mary by the Commanders over the Bears, where it bounced off the group of people and right into the arms of Noah Brown. And of course, like a lot of stuff happened. I mean, the guys taunting the fans and basically cost his team the game. Then you had WWE superstar Seth Rollins having his reaction with his buddy. You know, they're laughing, they're gonna win. All of a sudden, the Bears give up the Hail Mary, and he's in shock. He's like all in shock, and of course, he got upset. But he also, not many people know this, but he also he also took off his little pass that he had and threw it into the garbage. Somebody snapped a photo of that, so you could tell he wasn't too thrilled when it came to that. Um, but but yeah, no, NFL will be week 9. But before we go into week 9, let's take a look back at what happened in week 8. So as you can see, uh, we had 6 matchups go on this week. For the first one, looks like Unfinished Business defeated Big Papa 119.42 to 92.06. For Big Papa, Dak Prescott finished with 17.62 fantasy points. He basically he was dead basically the first 3 quarters, and then the last game or last quarter in the fourth quarter just just started going off and finished with 17 points. James Conner, tough matchup against Miami. I think they're one of the tops when it comes to the run. Uh, didn't do great when he came to rushing the ball. He did score the touchdown, did a couple of receptions for 14.9 fantasy points. Aaron Jones, tough matchup against the Rams. Uh, he did. He got 11.5 fantasy points, a couple of receptions out the backfield. Um, in the loss to the Rams here. Rams were basically full powered at that point. Tyreek Hill, Tua's coming back. Tua came back this week. Tyreek Hill got benefited from that with 6 receptions for 72 yards. Um, did have a foot injury, so keep an eye on that. I'm sure he'll still play or whatnot, but I'll keep an eye on that situation going forward. Jaden Reed, 2 receptions, 55 yards. Just had the carry for no yards for 7.5 points. Didn't really do much. He expected all the receivers for the Packers to go off this week due to Jacksonville being, I think, poor at basically receptions, touchdowns, and like fantasy points against to the receivers. But and then Hunter Henry, 5 for 45. He got thrown the ball. Uh, he got thrown the ball too with me, and then he got hurt. But he Henry benefited because he was open basically that game. So he got 9.5 fantasy points. Brian Robinson, Chicago is pretty good against the run. I think one of the top 5 against the run, uh, but still had a pretty decent game. 16 for 65 and the reception for 11 yards there. In that crazy game coming down to the wire game where we didn't know if Daniels was going to play or not. But Aubrey, only 6 points. He had 3 uh, extra points and then the field goal. And then Minnesota's defense uh, against the Rams, only 3.24 fantasy points. Meanwhile, for unfinished business, Jordan Love, he got a groin injury. That's something to keep monitoring. It seemed like he wanted to play even after he got hurt. So I still think he probably will play this week. But if not, I mean, you're still be in pretty good hands with Malik Willis in the backfield. But still 6.74 fantasy points. Cook got himself a big game this week against Seattle. Uh, Got 111 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, a few receptions for 22 yards. You're thinking Davis would eat into his work, but that was not the case. 29.30 fantasy points. He did get a bonus for uh, the 100 yards, going over 100 yards. Then Kyren Williams averages over 20 a game when all the offense, I think the offense in total, when it comes to the Rams, like in real NFL, averages 30 plus points a game where everyone is healthy. So Kyren Williams, Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, Matthew Stafford. One of them goes down, like it basically drops the points per game a lot. In this case, they do that for, um, I believe it's like 33.4. Still, I mean, a little bit lower than that, but they still hit 30. But when it comes to fantasy points, usually the running back benefits. He averages over 20 a game. And this here is still, it's still the same. They picked up right what they left off. 97 yards rushing, only a few yards away from the bonus. Didn't get the bonus there. 5 receptions for 19 yards and the touchdown receiving. So, and then this one, only 2 receptions, 7 yards. He did score against it, but when you can run the ball and when the special teams is just on point, you really don't have to do much as an offense. Um, and then Romeo Doubs, 3 for 72, 10.2 fantasy points. He has quietly have had, I think, 3 straight double-digit fantasy point games, so that's something to keep in mind. Evan Ingram, doesn't matter what, it seems like to me, it doesn't matter what team he's going to play, he's still going to get a majority of the targets. He did get 4 for 36, did get the touchdown against Green Bay as well. And Deebo Samuel, 4 for 15, he got 4 for 71, did get hurt here and there, but we'll keep a monitor on him, see if he plays this week. I think he should be fine, but we'll see. And then Myers, only 4 points, had the one. They didn't really score much against Buffalo. Buffalo's defense was on point. Did get an extra point. He did get a field goal. And then the Chiefs defense against Vegas with 11.68 fantasy points. Next matchup here, we got Saquon taking on Ricky Bobby, with Saquon winning 137.08 to 115.74. For Ricky Bobby, we've got Joe Burrow starting here, 14.86 fantasy points against Philly's defense, or Philly's team. Now, I figured he would throw for over 200. I thought it would be around 250 to 75, around that range, just because, and especially like deep passes. I was thinking a lot of deep passes this one, because that's where you want to attack Philly is the deep ball. But I mean, 1 touchdown. They gave up the 1 interception at the end. A few carries for 15 yards, still not bad. And then Achane, since he knew he was going to be back, since Tua's back, Achane benefited as well. He had 97 yards rushing, which a few points away from a bonus. And then he had 6 receptions, 50 yards, and a touchdown. So for 26.7 fantasy points. Javonte Williams should have, the stats and stuff should prove towards the running backs going off against Carolina. It doesn't matter what running back. It could be somebody that's doesn't play as well this year, but still can go off. In this case, 17 carries, 44 yards. Didn't really have that great of a game. He did catch 4 receptions out the backfield for 8 yards. And then Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp was back in the lineup. See how he would do this game. He had 5 receptions, 51 yards, and then the touchdown for 16.10 fantasy points. I thought in this case he would get a little more work. We didn't know Puka Nacua. I thought they were going to put him on a snap count in a way, but it didn't seem like that. It just seemed like he would target him. Stafford would target Nacua a lot. And then Cooper Kupp benefited here as well. Drake London, 4 for 34. Another, it didn't, scores could be a little, You didn't really have to throw as much because at the time you were killing the Buccaneers. You were beating the Buccaneers. And then, of course, Baker Mayfield started coming back towards the end. But 4 for 34, you didn't really have to do much. I mean, he's still wide receiver 3. Don't panic. He's still going to do a lot better. Like, he'll still be a lot better. Brock Bowers, you had Jacoby Myers back, so that ate into it a little bit. But you still finished with 5 for 58 for 10.8 fantasy points. And gave KC a little run for his money. Tank Dell, 4 for 35 and a touchdown. So for 13.5 fantasy points in their win over Indianapolis. should be getting more work. Him and Dalton Schultz, I think, should be getting more work when it comes to for Houston's thing. Same with Joe Mixon. I think a lot of vacating targets usually goes to the running back, but they're going to need. I'm sure will try to plan for Mixon. The Jets will try to plan for Mixon tomorrow. Younghoe Koo missed the one field goal, had the one field goal, 4 extra points. They still beat Tampa. And then Denver's defense against Carolina, 11.18 fantasy points. And meanwhile, for Saquon, getting back in the win column after a horrendous losing streak. Brock Purdy, 26 fantasy points on the dot, 260 yards, a touchdown, 8 for 56 and a touchdown. Still had Debo, still had Kittle. Kittle had himself a good game. And Jawan Jennings, all right, you lost Brandon Ayuk for the year. Jawan Jennings was out. So you had Ricky Purcell step in for a little bit. And I'm not going to lie, I don't remember how he did. Saquon Barkley had 108 yards rushing, did really well against Cincinnati's run defense because you want to attack him with the run. 13.10 fantasy points, only 1 reception in the back. You had the bombs to, you had a couple touchdowns, I think, at the goal line that were given to Jalen Hurts, and then you had the deep touchdown Jalen Hurts had to Devontae Smith. So, I mean, a lot of, when you're winning too, like it's not going to be, like you're not going to get much receptions or touchdowns off the backfield. Josh Jacobs, like intrigues me. Like there's still, if he falls into that category of like Joe Mixon in a way, where like you think of him as like, okay, he should not be doing good. Like you hate on him basically for no reason. And it's like you think he's going to fall off or you think he's going to do it, and then all of a sudden he has this great season, and then it's like, why were we even doubting him to begin with? 26.50 fantasy points, had 127 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns. He did get the bonus point for the 100-yard game. 1 reception, -2 yards. And then speaking of Devontae Smith, 6 for 85 in the touchdown, including that big touchdown pass from Hurts, 20.50 fantasy points. Addison, 2 for 22. Didn't really do much this game. That may change next game. We'll see. But then again, we'll keep an eye on TJ Hawkinson. He may be back this week, so we'll find that out. Andrews is coming back. It seems like he's putting a little string of games together, but they just traded for Deontay Johnson, so I don't know how that's going to play into it. To me, trading for Deontay Johnson leaves me with some questions where it's like, do you need an extra receiver? Is there something wrong with Zay Flowers, or are they just trying to upgrade at that position? I mean, I think he's better than Bateman. I don't think I don't think Bateman's going to do much. I don't know how he fits into that offense. There's a lot of mouths to feed, but we'll keep an eye on that. I mean, it looks like Andrews is getting it back, but we'll see. J.K. Dobbins against New Orleans, he had 57 yards rushing, little under 4 carry. We did get the touchdown, 4 receptions, 11 yards as well. Excuse me here. And then Harrison Butker, he had 10 fantasy points, a couple field goals, a few extra points in the win over Vegas. And Baltimore's defense, on paper, this would have been nice. Like the matchups looks nice, but it's Jameis Winston. I mean, in my other league, I got the Ravens defense. I should have signed up a different defense, but I figured, like it wasn't going to be, they weren't going to drop like 24 points basically. I mean, but then again, though, Browns might be a sneaky team now that Jameis Winston's quarterback. I mean, it's been a while since the Browns have scored 20 points in a game. But yeah, so, and then matchup number 3 saw America defeating Game Over For You, 145.51 to 115.57. Lamar Jackson had himself a pretty good game, 289 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, and of course 8 carries for 46 yards in the loss actually to Cleveland. or 29 points. Sorry, they scored 29 in that game. Which, of course, upset of the week, I would think. Um, but hopefully, next game should be a bounce back game for him. Uh, hopefully, well, for the Ravens, actually. And then Brees Hall, 16 for 80 yards. Pretty good day running the ball. Reception for 9 yards, but they could not get the win over New England at the end with the touchdown for Stevenson, put them in the position to win. And then Harris, you want to run against the Giants, and Harris did run against the Giants for 114 yards, 3 receptions for 17 yards. And there was someone here. I believe this was Jauan Jennings. I don't know why it's showing it like this, but there was someone here. I think it's Jauan Jennings, and I'm pretty sure that he didn't get him switched out in time. Brian Thomas Jr., 3 for 60 and a touchdown for 15 fantasy points. It seems like he's getting another touchdown, and that he is Trevor's go-to guy besides Ingram. However, he did get hurt last game, and it's reported that he would be missing 2 to 4 weeks. But it seems like, though, Doug Peterson was saying it's a day-to-day thing. So I'm more. I mean, that's something interesting to watch. I'm waiting until Friday to find out if they are going, like, what's the plan. If I had to take a guess, he ain't playing. He ain't playing this week, and Parker should slide right into that spot. Keep an eye on Gabe Davis too. See if he plays this week. Kittle, 6 for 128 and a touchdown. Happy National Tight Ends Day. I forgot about that. Travis Etienne's late scratch as well. They get him out in time. Chris Boswell, still kicking field goals. Has actually been pretty good this year when it comes to field goals this year. 4 field goals, 3 from short field goals, and then 1 close to 40 yards. And then a couple extra points. And then San Francisco's defense was a good play against Dallas for 8.61 fantasy points. Then for America, you got Pat Mahomes finally getting into the 20 points games. It's been a while since he threw a touchdown pass in October. But still, 262, 2 touchdowns, pretty efficient. Had the 1 interception still. 8 straight games. 8 straight games in this with an interception. It's not really as much. I mean, you're still doing pretty good. 6 carries, 17 yards. I'm not really panicking on Pat Mahomes. Pat Mahomes is going to do Pat Mahomes things. And he really doesn't have to do much when you have, Kareem Hunt back there too. And speaking of Kareem Hunt, only got 59 yards rushing, 21 carries, but he had a touchdown. Then Alvin Kamara, he had 10 for 67, had pretty good. Actually, I think the Chargers are like top 5, I think, when it comes to run defense, and actually did pretty good with 10 for 67. He did get peppered with targets in the backfield with Rattler, 6 for 55, so 18.20 fantasy points. Doesn't look like he'll be with rushing, but with receiving will still make him a valuable fantasy threat. Mooney, I've heard that from different places he would be a sleeper this week. I just wanted to I don't have him, but I heard he would be a sleeper. Carr's 4 for 86 and a touchdown. That's still pretty good for 18.60 fantasy points. Cooper, only 1 reception for 3 yards. He's questionable. Keep him in check. I don't know what happened last game. I don't remember him getting hurt. Maybe it was just me. I just watched so many games at once, I didn't really see anything. And Shakir ended up taking. I know Shakir did really well that game. Cade Otton seems like it's the next target in line. And of course, he's going to have to pass to him a lot when you don't have receivers. But Cade Otton's going to benefit very well. Another 10 plus target game, 9 receptions, 81 yards, 2 touchdowns for 29.10 fantasy points. Jonathan Taylor back after the injury, 105 yards, got the bonus point for an extra point. He got a touchdown, got a reception for 12 yards against Houston for 19.7 fantasy points. And then Tucker missed another field goal, 3 extra points as well. I'm not panicking on Justin Tucker. Maybe this is the year that he uh, that he's not going to do great when it comes to kicking. Right? We had Chris Boswell do it the one year. We had Mason Crosby. If y'all remember Mason Crosby and his kicking woes, where they said, you know what, no, we're still going to hang on to him. And then the next year, he was fine. Okay, Boswell, the next year, he was fine. And Tucker, the next year, I would think still be fine. That's just a few. There are plenty of other kickers that have done that as well. And then, of course, Detroit. Want to play Detroit against Tennessee at this point. But they uh, they had the touchdown. 17.13 fantasy points. They did have the touchdown. They shut down Tennessee. But yeah, there's that. And then for matchup number 4, we got Hawk Pockets defeating Garrett and the Jets in a close battle, 132.49 to 127.63. And to me, I think that's due to Mason getting hurt and being out for the game. But let's go to Hawk Pockets. Let's see what we got here. Jalen Daniels didn't know he was going to play. He came back. He played. He still dominated. 326 passing yards and a touchdown. 8 carries, 52 yards, 23.24 fantasy points, and 1 touchdown. The crazy Hail Mary at the end. Now, Bijan Robinson, 63 yards. Another great game on the rushing aspect. Also, 7 receptions for 43 yards and a touchdown. It's like McCaffrey-like numbers here for 23.60. And then Stevenson, 20 for 48. Didn't really do a great job rushing the ball. Jets are really hard against the run. However, I mean, when you're by the goal line, you drive down the goal line, still get the touchdowns. You still got that. You got 3 receptions for 17 yards and then the 2-point conversion as well. So 23.50 or 50 fantasy points. Xavier Worthy, even with you wanted to see how DeAndre Hopkins would play a factor, he still did pretty good. 4 for 37 and that touchdown. I don't see that being consistent, but we will see. Crazy things have happened. He could end up being a play where he's wide open and people are covering DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, who's more dangerous? Like a guy who you've seen or a guy you haven't seen? But then Jerry Jeudy benefited too with Jameis Winston coming in 5 for 79 and not a touchdown, 5 for 79, 12.9 fantasy points. And then Dalton Kincaid, 4 for 31. He did get a touchdown as well for 13 fantasy points. Seems kind of nice, but we'll see if this is going to be a consistent thing. Michael Pittman, 1 for 16. Keep an eye on him. I don't know if he's going to play this week, this Sunday night, but we will see. 2.60 fantasy points. Josh Downs, I think, keep an eye on him too, because I think he's dealing with the questionable tag too. McManus, seems like the Packers fixed their kicking woes a little bit. Seems like it, with McManus going 3 for 3. Another game-winning field goal, back-to-back weeks, a game-winning field goal. And then a few extra points. And then Green Bay's defense, come back. And then Green Bay's defense was 7.89 fantasy points. And then for Garrett and the Jets, we had Josh Allen with 23.82 fantasy points. Receiver his passing numbers have increased a little bit. 283 yards, 2 touchdowns, interception, 7 carries for 25 yards, 23.82 fantasy points. Don't really have to do much. I mean, since you're blowing teams out the water. Mason got hurt during the game for 1.8 fantasy points. That would have been the deciding factor, and I think that would have gotten Garrett the win here. But, I mean, it's fantasy. Stuff happens. Pollard, keep an eye on Pollard. He did pretty well against Detroit's defense when it comes to rushing, which that was pretty cool because, I mean, Titans fan. I'm a Titans fan. I like to see my boys do well. 20 carries, 94 yards. Did get a few receptions, 23 yards. But got to go back to the drawing board. Got to figure this out. To me, we were doing fine until Adams asked for his release. And once that happened, then everything just fell apart. I think it's just because he wanted to win, and he didn't win, he needed to leave. But I think instead of, I miss the old days where some people would just stay with the team. Just know that, hey, we're developing, we're rebuilding, and this would help out a lot. And that a veteran presence definitely would have helped out a lot. But that's fine. gotta go back to the drawing board. So AJ Brown, I would figure they would have covered him more because he came back last week and lit him up, and then 5 for 84 is still pretty good for 13.4, but um, but yeah, it was a Devontae Smith game, and then Garrett Wilson. I didn't think they would perform very that like okay. My original opinion, I didn't think they performed very well, just because Devontae Adams is coming. He's going to want to target him a lot. But still, another 100-yard game for Wilson, which makes the offense a little pretty good. Um, 5 for 113, 17.30 fantasy points, but they gotta turn it into wins. I mean, fantasy points can be good, but you gotta turn those into wins. And then Trey McBride, 9 for 124. I know in the past you attacked Miami at the tight end because they're going to be good everywhere else. Plus, I would think they'd shut down the time just because they weren't very good at the time. But yeah, so 22.40 fantasy points. Zay Flowers, another 100-yard game, 7 for 115. Sorry, for 19.50 fantasy points. McLaughlin had a 50-yarder and then another 30-yarder, I believe, for 3, and then 3 extra points for 8 points. And then Jets defense with 6.71 fantasy points. And then Hurts getting the win over Birds Abides. High scoring affair, 153.30 to 138.41. For Birds Abides, Kyler Murray started coming back towards as the game progressed, started getting more and more. As the game progressed, 307 yards. He did get a bonus for the 300-yard game, bonus point for that. He had a couple touchdowns and then 5 carries for 19 yards. And then Gibbs ran the ball, 11 carries, 127 yards, and a touchdown, and a reception for 6 yards. You cannot stop Detroit when it comes to the run game. They have a two-headed monster in the backfield. But, I mean, what can you do? And then Allen, Braden Allen, 9.2 fantasy points, 12 for 32 and a touchdown. Again, keep an eye on these guys. I don't know how he's going to fare. It's kind of hard to tell at this point, especially with it could flip flop back between Bryce Hall and Allen here. JSN, DK Metcalf was out this game, so it should have been an uptake for Lockett and JSN. JSN here, 12.9 fantasy points, 6 for 69. Still couldn't really do much because they were getting blown out, but still 7 of his targets ain't nothing to sneeze at. And then Waddle, 4 for 45, 8.50 or 50 fantasy points. Kyle Pitts, holy smokes, 2 touchdowns. 4 for 91 and 2 touchdowns. I could tell you right now, a Kyle Pitts touchdown was not on my bingo card. And it wasn't on my bingo card. It wasn't on the second bingo card. It wasn't even on the third bingo card I have. But 25.10 fantasy points. This is what people look for. The Kyle Pitts breakout game. And Officer Pitts is now back in session. And then DJ Moore, 5.40 fantasy points. 2 carries, 7 yards, and then 2 for 27. I was expecting this to be a lot better because Washington's defense, you pass on them, it's going to be because Daniels is going to go off. You got to play basically a shootout game with Washington. However, it was a defensive battle, and they did not play well on offense at all. Caleb Williams did not play well on offense at all either, and I was expecting DJ Moore to have that big game, just to step up in the situation, including even a touchdown. But fortunately, that's not the case. 5.4 fantasy points. Fairbairn hit all of his field goals, a couple extra points for 11 points in the win over Indianapolis. And then Pittsburgh's defense had themselves the game, including the touchdown as well. The touchdown that at first we thought was going to get called back because of the penalty, and then the penalty wasn't even because of that. And it's like, oh, touchdown it is. So, and then for Hurts, Hurts the quarterback had himself a game. Uh, 16 for 20. That's pretty good percentage. 80%. No, 18. That's 80%. 236 yards and a touchdown. Uh, okay, he had 3 touchdowns. My mistake. I thought he had 2. He had 3 when it came to on the ground for 37.14 fantasy points. Derrick Henry, 11. I mean, neutral game script, and when you're down, it's basically so 11 for 73 and a touchdown, and then a reception for 4 yards. And then Montgomery, um, had the one pass to the touchdown to was it Sam Laporta, I think, and then 9 carries for 33 yards and a touchdown, and then the reception for 5 yards. So he's basically doing it all this game. So he's basically doing it all this game. And then Jamar Chase, 9 for 54 and a touchdown for 20.40 fantasy points. And then Diggs, that's unfortunate. 1 carry for -4 yards, 5 for 81 for 12.70 fantasy points. Was on his way to having a really good, like a better game, but you saw when he went to cut back to the left and the non-contact injury. And for those that don't watch football, don't usually understand the injury stuff, when it's usually a non-contact injury, there's a highly likely chance that they're done for the season. Well, poor guy. I mean, yeah, like he can be a little bit of a diva sometimes, but I mean, you never want to see those types of injuries, man. So hopefully, keep him in your prayers. Hopefully a quick recovery. I know he's a little bit older. David Njoku, 5 for 61 and a touchdown. Like I said, that little Moss catch in the end zone was pretty sick. And then Pickens, 4 for 74, had that big play, the big gain towards the end of the game. And I thought he was going to score, but he stepped out of bounds. That would have been a nasty play, too. And then Elliott's 15 fantasy points, 3 field goals, 4 extra points in the win over Cincy. And then Philly's defense in here with 7.98 fantasy points. Then as the last matchup for the evening, we had Rich Nasty defeating Gritty Fly, 139.92 to 123.23. Nice. Herbert in this game for Gritty Fly, 279 yards, 2 touchdowns, 4 for 49. When your offense is getting the ball back, because New Orleans not really putting points on the board, you definitely will reap the benefits for that. But 25.06 fantasy points. Walker had to abandon the run. They couldn't get anything going on the run, so they had to pass. But he did, because you see 4 receptions for 33 yards for 8.50 fantasy points. Swift, another big game. 129 yards, did get the bonus for that too, and a touchdown for 19.90 fantasy points. Justin Jefferson, 8 for 115 for 20.50 fantasy points. Number 1 receiver in the game right now. Hard to stop, hard to cover. Lockett, only 1 for 9 yards. He's got a questionable tag. Keep an eye on him. Sure, fine. Kelsey, 10 receptions, 90 yards, a touchdown. Again, National Tight End Day. My tight ends numbers might be a little skewed, but 25 fantasy points. This is where Travis Kelsey is. Like, this is the Travis Kelsey you want. And then Keenan Allen, 2 for 39, 5.90 fantasy points again. Defense there. McPherson missed a 1 field goal, had a couple extra points for 4 fantasy points. And then Chargers defense for 12.47 fantasy points. And then meanwhile, for Witch Nasty, Caleb Williams, 131 yards, did have a 2-point conversion, 9 carries, 47 yards. Only 7.94 fantasy points. I mean, to me, game plan didn't make sense. Washington usually gives up a lot, so you would think that the Bears would win. But and then Mixon here, getting had 102 yards rushing, a little over 4 yards to carry for a touchdown. Had the bonus for 1 point for the 100-yard bonus. 4 for 32 in the receiving game for 24.40 fantasy points. Chuba Hubbard, 56 yards rushing, a little under 4 carry, couple receptions for 15 yards. They still lost that game for 9.10 fantasy points. Malik Neighbors back, 7 for 71, against a tough Pittsburgh defense for 14.10 fantasy points. Devontae Adams, 4 for 54. I can tell you right now, if Wilson were to get hurt, Adams is going to feast. And then Schultz, 4 for 52, 9.20 fantasy points. Might be an increase in targets, even though the Jets tomorrow are going to have a tough defense against tight ends. It might be. I think it still would be fine for Schultz to have a good game due to extra targets. And then CeeDee Lamb. Now, this is CeeDee Lamb. This is who we're for. Peppered, Prescott, and Lamb, deadly combination. 13 for 146 and 2 touchdowns for and a point for the 100-point bonus or for the 100-yard game for 40.60 fantasy points. That's a beauty there. And then Carlson, no longer a Packer, now with the 49ers. Basically, 49ers got kicking issues due to injuries, and that's unfortunate, but he seems to have, I don't think he's missed a field. I'm pretty sure, I'm not going to jinx it. Well, I'll jinx it, it don't matter. I am pretty sure he hasn't missed a field goal since he's been a part of that team. But yeah, a few field goals, couple 40s, even that 50-yarder, a few extra points for 16 fantasy points. Washington's defense, 9.86 fantasy points. Okay, so the best scoring team was Hurts with 153.30 fantasy points. Worst scoring team was Big Papa when it came to 92.06 fantasy points. The best starters for the week, the players for the week, are the starters for the week. Jalen Hurts led all quarterbacks with 37.14 fantasy points. Cook led all running backs with 29.30 fantasy points. CeeDee Lamb led all receivers with 40.60 fantasy points. Otten led all tight ends with 29.10 fantasy points, and Carlson led all kickers with 16 fantasy points, and the Steelers defense led all defenses with 17.83 fantasy points. Then you have for the bench overs of the week, the guys that had on their bench. Kirk Cousins had 34.64 fantasy points. Tracy led our running backs with 24 fantasy points, and poor guy, that dude was on pace for a beast game. I think he had 140 something yards rushing. And then a touchdown on top of that. He would have got the bonus, I think, too, on top of that. Unfortunately, he got hurt, which is a bummer. Hopefully, it's not too serious. We want that guy to play. And then for the receivers, Ladd McConkey leads with 30.10 fantasy points. And then Kraft for 16.80 led all tight ends fantasy points. And then I know there's got a kicker on the bench with the kickers on a bye, Narvison for the Titans. 0 points. And then the Buffalo Bills defense with 9.81 fantasy points. When it comes to awards this week, we got, excuse me here, we have Hurts winning a couple of awards here for most efficient manager and overachiever with 153.30 fantasy points. 100%, I think, on the performance, it looks like, and outperforming his projection by about 35 points. For least efficient manager, it looks like Big Papa has a least efficient manager award and an achiever award, 92.06 fantasy points, 120, possible 123, but starting projection was 111. Bert Abides had the highest points in the loss with 138.41 fantasy points in a close matchup. Or in a high scoring matchup with Hurts. And then the lowest points in a win goes to Unfinished Business and their win over Big Papa with the 119.42 fantasy points. Blake's blowout here goes to pancakes. Nice. Goes to America, 145.51 fantasy points in the 30-point win. Narrow victory looks like goes to Hawk Pockets over Garrett and Jets in a close 5-point swing. Like I said, that could have been more if Mason didn't get hurt. So, alrighty. And then, usually this is the part where I show the standings. We're going to do something a little bit different. Let's go with the power rankings instead. In those power rankings, I take the wins and losses I take the wins, the losses, the points for, the points against, and I throw it all together into a formula, and it generates a power ranking score. So here are the power rankings for week number 9. So as you can see, Hertz leads the way with 1.25 score, moving up a spot to number 1 this week. Game Over For You is 1.16, has a score of 1.16, and has dropped down a spot to number 2. Next is America with the 1.14 score, moving up a spot to number 3. Garrett and the Jets have a 1.02 score, moving down to spot number 4. And then Hot Pockets, a 1.01 score, moving up to number 5. Then got a big jump here for Unfinished Business at 1.00 fantasy point or score, and a +3 on the jump to number 6. Saquon 0.99, also jumped 3 spots up to number 7. Bird Abides and Big Papa looks like are back to back with 0.98. However, the tiebreaker looks like Bird Abides has a 0.001 score ahead of Big Papa. Bird Abides does drop 2 spots to 8, and then Big Papa drops a whopping 4 spots to number 9. And then Ricky Bobby, 0.88, dropping 2 spots to 10. Witch Nasty with a 0.87, doesn't move from where he was from last week at 11. And Gritty Fly for Fight Guy with 0.73, and he does not move either. All right, so week number 9. We have, for the matchups, we have Big Papa at 4-4 taking on America at 5-3. Looks like for the projections wise, I'm just going to go by projections on what I see. Looks like that matchup's going to be pretty close. But stuff may change because everybody usually has their lineups ready by the weekend, and this stuff can change. Then we have Ricky Bobby at 3-5 taking on Hot Pockets at 4-4. Then we have Game Over For You at 5-3 taking on Gritty Fly at 2-6. And then we have Unfinished Business at 4-4 taking on Birds of Bites, who is also 4-4. And stuff will be changed around, like I said. The projections might be a little bit closer. Witch Nasty at 3-5 taking on Garrett of the Jets at 4-4. I know that last I checked, Witch Nasty does have a bye spot, so that projection will change as well. And then Saquon taking on Saquon at 4-4, taking on Hertz at 6-2. If I had to pick a game for the week that I would like to see in this situation, actually would be Witch Nasty taking on Garrett and the Jets. Some of the matchups look nice, but to me, this could be a potential upset in this case. But we will see how things play out. It should be an exciting matchup for both teams. Some of these teams are getting back players. Oh, hold on. Okay. Some teams are getting back players. Some teams are going to be. Some guys are going to get an uptake in volume coming up. And it looks like this should be a high score. I would think this would be a high scoring affair. Yep, that's right. Okay. So there's a kicker that's on a bye, and I'm sure that will be changed. You got Washington taking on the Giants, so that may change as well. But we will see on that. Okay. Well, that's all I had for you guys today. To everyone out there, good luck on your fantasy teams. May the odds ever be in your favor. And on to week number 9. So see you later. Have a good one, guys.